Hello and welcome to Blackjacks. Carrying on with the CB750 frame, if you remember the last episode we looked at how you bend the rails, how you get the rotation between bends, placement of the bends and all the rest of it. The real issue we got now is cutting the frame rails into the steering head and or even the steering head and the axle plate. How you arrive at where the frame rail needs to sit on the jig is a bit of a problem, because if you measure it from your reference point here, if you're a little low or a little high, you're going to be out because of the angle that the rail's running at. So what I decided to do was use the front lower engine mount as a reference point, and that's got to be 22 5/16 back along the jig, which that is, and it has to be 3.5 inches above the jig, which is what the block and the spacer are for. That puts this plate where it needs to be, and it's not quite sitting right for some reason, and it turns out the reason it's not quite fitting right is because this is up in the air, because the frame rail where I left it along at the back is caught under the fixings for the axle plate. So what I'm going to do is, excuse me a minute, I'll wander around the other side. I need to find where I can cut this off, leaving me enough behind to play with it backwards and forwards and let it sit in the right place. And since it's something like right, we're just going to mark this where it's going to clear the nut. Then take a measurement off of that, which is 3.5, and trim both these rails down. So I'll get that done and we'll stick them back on the jig. Right, so this end all cut off so it's not sticking out here, and it's clearing the nut there now. Everything's sitting a lot happier. Next thing we've got to worry about is cutting it into the steering head. Now, this starts with taking a line, which I obviously can't see from where I am, but hopefully you can see in the shot, that it's parallel to the centre line through the steering head. So this side I'm just going to go there like that. With that one marked, I need to mark another one that's parallel with the back of the steering head. So that puts one there. And we can go over to the bench and we can start having a look at roughing out the cut to fit the steering head to the, or the other way around, really fit the down tube to the steering head. I've got this mark, which is the one that was down the centre line of the steering head. So this is the outside of the top of the frame rail, this is the bottom bit going off this way, and it kicks around the axle plate. So I need to cut that off at the angle I marked it at, as squarely as I can. Right, the next problem here. I'll flip that over. Let's put it this way and talk about what's happening next. So that piece cut off the end, move the rail round in the vise and get this bit sticking straight up in the air. So this is the bottom of the frame rail, it's pointing straight up in the air. That gives me some idea where I'm trying to work here. Now, because I've got that, I've still got my line on the inside face which runs parallel to the one there, and I need to cut this from about a third of the way across the width of the tube and come back about 2/3 of the distance between there and there. So that's kind of puts me about there, and then the last third of the way wants to meet up with that other line, and that should give me a shape that's going to meet the steering head satisfactorily. It's not going to be perfect first time, but it'll be close enough for government work. Right, where's the saw? This is not a very good position to be doing this in, because I'm going to have to put my back to the camera again. So I'll do this anyway. Right. In theory, because this is vertical, that cut needs to be vertical on this plane, a bit of an angle in that plane, and come in that far. So, well, that's quite a good place to put it to tell you about it. It's not a very good place to cut it, so I'm going to move that. And look, right, there we go. Square across. I can tip it that way to get the cut vertical. Pinch my finger there. So that's that part of that done. So now I'm going to make the second cut following from there, the plane of the line I drew parallel to the first cut, but tipping the blade this way to give me a bit of an angle on it. Go a bit deeper with this one. There we go. So all I need to do now is take it back over to the frame, offer it up, and make some more marks to determine where we want to take more metal out. And as you can see, that's a reasonably good fit. It's not dead right, it's not completely accurate, but it's definitely in the ballpark. You should come in, it's about there. That's only leaning out. It's leaning out ever so slightly now, so by the time this is scalloped back and given a little love and a little caressing, it should all fit reasonably well. So I think the next thing we need to do is take a flappy wheel to it. We don't want that under there. And then it's time for a refit. And of course, having knocked all that over, I've got to go through all the aggravation of measuring it up again. But I'm going to pop around the inside. And we can forward a little there. Yeah. Repeat as necessary. Lose a little bit of that there. Look at it, think about it. If you're not exactly sure, just head in the general direction and see if it fits better. And repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. That's something like it in actual fact. So, with that fitting nicely, it's time just to get on and do the other side. I'm going to stop and have a cup of coffee first, and then I'm going to get on with the other side. So, catch you in a bit. This end is close enough. Now, there is one thing you have to watch, and that's that these down tubes are not skewed in relation to each other. So because of this is completely knackered, I'm going to put a small bubble on top of it. Now if I put that bubble and that stick against the front of the frame rails, and I level the bubble, which is the other way for there, and I can eyeball down, is that right? No, that's not right. There we go, that's right. I can eyeball down to the square here and make sure that this is parallel to the square. And if it is, then they have to be pretty much in line and not skewed like that or like that. So that's how you measure that. So next thing we do is trim that end off and get that seat exactly right. Cut this end in, basically, where's my little stick rule? I need to be, what is my plan? 3/4 of an inch up there, 3/4 of an inch up there. Chop those off to length and cut them in exactly the same way as we cut the top ones in. I've tacked on a couple of pieces of box section, which is positioned so there. The rails are 10 and 8.5, sorry, between the rails. So outside to outside should be 10.5. Now I can pull the rails back against the box section, and I know they're in the right place. So, small problem. When I put the clamp on there and pull that round, it pulls the front of the top down tube away from the headstock, but it's still hitting both sides here, so I'm going to have to take this out and I'm going to let that rotate. I'm going to have to shave this top edge away a little. Right, so over to the bench and sort that out. With the down tubes fitted in position now, they're clamped to those couple of pieces of box section I tacked on there. You can start looking at the front engine mount. I've got measurement for 9.25 between now. The outside of the frame rails is 10.5. We know because we measured it. So 9.5 from, sorry, 9.25 from 10.5 leaves 3/4. Does it? No, it doesn't. It leaves 1.25 inches. Yes. So half of that is at 5/8. So if I set the gauge to 5/8, line it up like that, the inside face of the front mount should be sitting there. I've got this block square with that, and I'm squaring off it to the back of there. That should be 22 5/16, which it is, and it's 3.5 from the jig to the centre of the tube, not tube, part. So that's got that in position. That all looks reasonably happy, although I may have to go and give these a bit of a kiss. So before I start messing around with that, I'm just going to tack the front end of the down tubes, the back end of the down tubes in place. Then they're held at both ends, they're clamped in the middle, and I've got references for everything I need to do from now on. So that's the next thing. Front engine mounts. You said checking them one more time. Right, so that's the distance from there. That's too big. So resort to using this again. And that's level. Another check is from the rear wheel. So what's that, 34 7/8. Go the other side of the clamp. That's a little bit further back according to that. I breathed on it and it moved. 5/16. Yeah. And as you can see, mess around with that till you're blue in the face, but the optimal solution is add trip full stagger. Probably tack one end and then work from there. So get the tachometer out. Well, tap bloody left to right before you. That's the bit. The offset from side to side you can't change once you've tacked it, so that helps if the engine sprocket lines up with the rear wheel sprocket when you finish your motorcycle frame. Let's measure some stuff. Lovely. Yep. Right. There's a bit of a gap at the front here, so if I tap that there, that'll pull that way. But it's touching at the back there. So that's where I'm going to tack it, because where it's touching it won't pull. Okay, core 22 5/16, 3.5. How about that? Next thing we'll do is cut some tubes to go here and here. Okay, having cut a piece of tube to the appropriate length, I mark a line all the way along the length of it, which lets me index the two fish mouths together. Next step is to mark a line 1/4 inch back from the end around both ends of the tube. That gets arrayed in the vise so that it forms a square when you're looking straight down on it. Cut through the two corners of the square, repeat that on the other side of the tube, and at the other end aligning both fish mouths with the axial line. Once that's done, take a suitably sized file and file the cuts down to the cut liners. And at that point you should have something like a fish mouth that fits. I've got this cross tube cut and this cross tube cut. This one's really quite easy to fit because it just slides in due to the fact the frame rails are running apart. This one, not quite so easy because it has to be hammered in because the frame rails are parallel and you have to spring past the point where it's jamming. The next thing to do is fit the uprights to the rear of the engine. Now these need to be vertical, which is a bit of a pain because this rail is running that way and there's only one point where it's directly above the bottom rail, and that is just there. I arrived at where that was by putting the long tape in that as well, because this is, as we know, is no good. Finding the point where that was vertical. So then mark my point on the frame, checked with the drawing, and it was rather close. Now I need to establish where the bottom has got to be, which is going to mean looking at the drawing because it's sometimes passed since I worked that out. Problematically, cutting this tube, the mitre at the top is running that way, the mitre at the bottom is running that way, and this needs cutting at an angle. I think the top is going to need cutting at an angle too. So that's all very compound. So that's the extent of the problem. How do we go about solving it? Well, there isn't a hard and fast way of solving it. It's a matter of what you're comfortable with. My approach is going to be, that's where the centre line of the tubes need to be. And I'm going to spend like 20 minutes looking for a Sharpie again. Bad preparation. And I'm going to mark the centre line of the tube, and I'm going to get a line for the angle. I'm going to go over to the bench and I'm going to cut the end of the tube off. I should have made a bit of a pig's ear of that, to be honest, because it's sitting on the front and it's swinging around clear at the back, and I haven't got a lot of room left to cut it in. But that's okay, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that and cut it like that, which should give me the beginnings of the fish mouth I need. So with that little bit of hacksawing done, sit that in there, and this is all at the right angle, so there's a little like a little following wind. What I'm going to, can't stop talking with Sharpie lid in my mouth. What I'm going to do now is hold that in position. That is very nearly square. I'm going to mark across centre line and that's to remind myself where the cut's got to go. So basically I've marked the angle that the seat rail runs at on there, and I've got a couple more marks on there so that I know where the fish mouth's got to go in relation to those lines. So back to the bench then. So after a few repetitions of the fit, measure, repeat, that's it sitting where it needs to be. Final check is to take the level, because it's supposed to be vertical in this plane, and put the level there. Now, yeah, what you need to do is make sure that your level's square, which is probably an in joke with the Freemasons, but if it's around this side, the bobble's at the front. If it's around that side, the bobble's at the front as well. But it's at the other front now. And we want to measure it here. So obviously as you move it around the tube, the bubble transitions from one end to the other. So the trick is to look down on it and make sure you've got it parallel to the tube centre line and at 90 degrees to the centre of the jig, and then stick your head around here and then look at the bubble, because if you sort of look at the bubble from here, there's a tendency to adjust it until it's how you want it. So having sorted that out, I suppose it's time to take it over there, use it as a pattern for making the other one. With those two cut and positioned, that just leaves the headstock brace tube and the short tie there that it butts into. Right, so hold that there, line that up, get some marks parallel to the tube. And what I'm going to do then is I'm going to cut one end of that. I have some idea where to cut the other end. So with the fishmouths cut on that, let me hop up over, and that all sits in there quite happily. So the last tube that we got cut for this frame is this one. It goes from there to there. So there's a real big long cut on the back end. If I hang that for there, get this end at the height it needs to be at, which is there, run it that way. And that is about where it crosses. Top tube. And the drawing says 2 3/8, so we'll trust the drawing. Keeping the saw tipped at that angle, because then you can gauge the line of the cut. Oh. Okay, that's going to need more work, but it's a good start. So then we can cut and in place. It's all ready for tacking up. You can't assume that because it was in the right place the last time you checked it, it's going to be there the next time you check it. So as you go through tacking it, you want to check everything repeatedly. So I'm putting straight across there, and I'm eyeballing down on the jig, and those aren't quite lined up. Now I've moved it completely, and that's how it goes. So just bear in mind, there's no point in measuring everything really carefully and then not checking it while you're tacking it. But with that said, it's time to get on and start tacking it up. So let's get with it. Now to hold it together. At this point you should be watching some video of me tacking the rear lower mounts in. Unfortunately I forgot to turn the camera on, so that didn't happen. But as you see, they're tacked in place. The frame's tacked up, the mounts are tacked up, and we've still got no idea where this upper rear mount's supposed to go. So what I think I'm going to do is, once this is all cooled down, I'm going to pop it out of the jig, lower it over, put it over the motor, put the studs back in, and then have a measure of where the upper rear mount wants to go. That will be in the next one, because this is probably enough for one video. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. If you have, you can demonstrate your approval by liking the video and possibly even subscribing to the channel, which would be a big help. And other than that, take care. I'll see you in the next one.